The year is 1560. We are standing on the main street of an English market town before one of the most recognisable buildings in all of history. You have seen this house 1,000 times, on postcards, in films, on chocolate boxes, the black timber frame making bold patterns against white plaster walls, the upper floors jutting out over the street, the steep roof, the leaded diamond-paned windows, the great brick chimney twisting up from the roofline. The Tudor house. It looks quaint to us now, a fairy tale cottage. But in 1560, this building is something else entirely. It is a machine for living, a status symbol, a workplace, a fortress against the night, and home to a prosperous merchant family, their servants, their apprentices, and a way of life stranger and richer than the postcard could ever suggest. Why do the upper floors overhang the street? Why is the window glass a display of wealth? Why does the whole family sleep sitting half upright? Why is the finest bed in the house a piece of furniture worth more than a farm? And why is that great chimney, of all things, the most revolutionary object in the entire building? Today, we are going to spend a full day inside a Tudor house, from the first raking of the fire before dawn to the barring of the doors at night, and discover how these famous buildings actually worked, room by room, floor by floor. Step off the muddy street, duck your head under the low doorframe, and come inside. Using advanced AI trained on the surviving Tudor houses of England, the household inventories and wills that list their contents room by room, the letters and account books of Tudor families, and the work of the historians and archaeologists who have studied how these buildings were made and lived in, we have reconstructed a day inside a Tudor house. And to understand the house, you must first understand how it was built, because the building itself is a masterpiece of carpentry. A Tudor house is, before anything else, a giant piece of furniture, a skeleton of oak, raised by hand and held together almost entirely without nails. The frame was cut from green oak, shaped by carpenters into posts, beams and braces, each joint individually made. The famous mortise and tenon, one timber slotted precisely into another and locked with a driven oak peg. The carpenters assembled and test-fitted whole wall frames flat on the ground, marking each joint with scratched numerals so the frame could be taken apart, carted to the site, and reassembled in the right order, an early form of prefabrication. Then, with ropes, poles, and many hands, the frames were reared up into position, and the skeleton of the house stood against the sky in a matter of days. The spaces between the timbers were filled with wattle-and-daub, a woven lattice of sticks packed over with a plaster of clay, dung, and straw, dried hard and lime-washed white, giving the classic black and white pattern, though in truth, many houses were originally silvery oak and cream, the tar-black timbers, often a later fashion. And then there is the most famous feature of all, the jetty, the way each upper floor oversails the one below, hanging out over the street. People still argue about why. The overhang gave you more floor space upstairs on a narrow, expensive town plot. It helped keep rain off the walls below. It made the structure stiffer, the projecting joists balanced like a seesaw by the weight of the wall above. And, not least, it looked impressive. A deep double jetty told the whole street that you could afford a lot of oak. Whatever the mix of reasons, the effect on a Tudor street was dramatic, the houses leaning out overhead, floor by floor, until in the narrowest lanes, the upper stories of facing houses almost touched, and neighbours could nearly shake hands across the street from their bedroom windows. Now step through the front door and meet the object that quietly revolutionised English life, the chimney. For centuries, the ordinary English house had been essentially one tall, smoky room, a great open hall with a fire burning on a hearth in the middle of the floor and the smoke drifting up into the blackened rafters and out through a vent. Everyone, family and servants together, lived, ate, and often slept in that one shared, smoke-hazed space. The Tudor age changed that, and the agent of change was brick. The great brick chimney stack, with fireplaces built into it on each floor, meant the fire could be moved to the wall and the smoke carried cleanly out of the building. And once you no longer needed the hall to be open to the roof to hold the smoke, you could do something transformative. You could put in a ceiling and build rooms above. Suddenly, the house could be divided: parlours, chambers, private rooms, and upstairs. The family could withdraw from the servants. The householder and his wife could have a bedchamber of their own. Privacy, as an everyday domestic experience, was being invented floor by floor around that brick stack. Contemporary writers actually remarked on it. Old men in Tudor villages marvelled at the multitude of chimneys lately erected, remembering their youth when a fire burned in the open hall and the smoke was thought to harden the roof timbers and keep the family healthy. The chimney also brought glass. Windows in this age graduated from openings with wooden shutters to leaded lattices of small diamond panes, because glass could only be made in small pieces, joined with strips of lead. Glass was expensive, and a wall of glinting windows was conspicuous wealth. In the grandest new houses of the age, people joked about walls that were more glass than wool. In our merchant's house, the glazed windows at the front face the street where they can be seen, while the back of the house makes do with less. Some families even treated window glass as a valuable possession to be bequeathed in wills. A warm, divided, glazed, private house. This is the quiet Tudor revolution, and everything about the day we are going to live flows from it. The day begins in darkness in the kitchen, with the raking of the fire. A servant is up first, before dawn, uncovering the embers that were banked under ash the night before, feeding them kindling, coaxing the kitchen fire back to life. Fire is precious and never allowed to die completely. Restarting one with flint and steel is tedious work. The kitchen, in a house like this, is busy from the first light. A wide hearth hung with iron pots on chains and hooks, a spit for roasting, a bread oven built into the chimney breast, its dome heated by burning a fire inside it, then raking out the embers and sliding the loaves into the stored heat. Water must be fetched from the well in the yard or the town conduit, hauled in by the bucket for cooking and washing. There is no tap, and every drop used in this house today will arrive on someone's shoulders. Breakfast is taken early and without ceremony. Bread, butter, cheese, perhaps cold meat, washed down with ale, for ale is the everyday drink of everyone in the household, children included, brewed weak for daily use, safer and more nourishing than suspect water. The household assembling in the morning is larger than a modern family, the master and mistress, their children, and then the wider household, servants who live in, and apprentices, teenage boys bound to the master for years to learn his trade, who eat at his table, sleep under his roof, and are subject to his discipline like sons. A prosperous Tudor house is a small community under one authority, and the master is answerable for the souls and conduct of everyone in it. Daylight fills the house with work because a Tudor townhouse is not a refuge from the working world, it is part of it. The ground floor front room facing the street is the shop, with a broad window whose shutters open to form a display board and counter. Here the master, a cloth merchant, does business through the daylight hours. Bolts of wool and linen, scales and shears, the apprentices fetching and measuring, customers haggling, the street outside a din of cartwheels, church bells, street sellers crying their wares, and the smells of horse, smoke, and the town ditch. Behind and above, the house is the mistress's domain, and running it is a profession in itself. She commands the servants, manages the stores, and oversees a program of production that would astonish a modern household. Brewing the ale, baking, salting and preserving meat, making preserves, tending the herb garden in the yard, distilling home medicines, making soap and candles, spinning, sewing and mending the household's linen. The Tudor housewife of the middling sort is closer to the manager of a small factory than to any modern stereotype, and household manuals of the age treat her role with real seriousness. The prosperity of the house depends on her skill. Dinner, the main meal, comes at midday, and in a prosperous house it is substantial. Pottage, roasted or boiled meats, bread, cheese, seasonal vegetables from the garden, perhaps fish on the fish days the law still enforces, all served in the hall or parlour, the household seated by rank, Grace said before and after. The parlour is the family's finest room, and here the house shows off. Wall panels of carved oak, a court cupboard displaying the family's pewter, and if they are doing very well, a few pieces of silver. Cushions and hangings bringing colour, perhaps painted cloths on the walls imitating tapestry. Furniture is sparse by our standards, a table, benches, one or two chairs, and the chair matters. In many households, a true chair with arms and a back is for the master, the head of the house, while everyone else takes stools and benches. Where you sit is who you are. As the light fails, the house begins to close in on itself, and we reach the strange, intimate world of the Tudor night. Artificial light is expensive. Fine wax candles are for the wealthy and the church. This household lights tallow candles made from animal fat, which smoke and smell, and rush lights, rushes dipped in fat, burning with a small, brief flame. Most rooms simply stay dark, and the household follows the sun to bed far earlier than we would. Before bed, the nightly ritual of shutting up, shutters closed and barred, doors locked, and the fires made safe, embers banked under ash or covered with a curfew, a metal dome whose name comes from the old order to cover fire, because in a town of timber houses, an escaped fire can devour a whole street before morning. Fear of fire is bred into everyone. Then upstairs by candlelight to the chambers, and to the most valuable object in the entire house, the great bed. The best bed of a prosperous Tudor family is a four-poster, a carved oak frame with a canopy hung all around with heavy curtains. Inside, a mattress stuffed with feathers if the family can afford it, on a base of ropes laced through the frame, ropes that must be tightened regularly so the bed does not sag. Sheets of linen, woolen blankets, a coverlet, and bolsters and pillows propping the sleepers up. For Tudor people commonly slept in a half-sitting position, and beds were shorter than ours partly for that reason. Drawn shut, the curtains make the bed a warm room within the cold room, private, enclosed, keeping out the draughts and the dark. Such a bed, with its hangings and feather beds, could be worth more than a labourer earned in years, and beds are proudly specifically bequeathed in wills, the second best bed being a famous example. Children and servants sleep on simpler beds, truckle beds that slide beneath the great bed by day, or pallets in the garrets under the roof. And the night is not one unbroken sleep. Like most people of their age, the household knows the two sleeps. A first sleep from early evening, a waking in the deep of night, an hour or so of quiet, prayer, talk, the mending of the fire, and then the second sleep until the servant rakes the kitchen embers before dawn, and the whole day begins again. And all of this, the oak frame and the jetties, the chimney and the glass, the parlour and the great bed, is about one thing above all: standing. Tudor England is a society obsessed with rank, and the house is its most public statement. The carved oak, the number of chimneys, the glazing, the pewter on the cupboard, the quality of the linen, every element announces precisely where this family stands, and the neighbours can read the front of the house like a ledger. There are even laws about display, the sumptuary laws, which regulate who may wear which fabrics, furs and colours according to rank, so that a man's coat, like his house front, is supposed to declare his true station. This is also a golden age of building. England in this century is peaceful and increasingly prosperous, and historians speak of a great rebuilding as families across the country replace old open halls with chimneyed, floored, glazed houses like this one. The black and white streetscapes we now think of as timelessly, quaintly English are, in fact, the proud new builds of an ambitious, upwardly mobile age, the Tudor equivalent of a street of brand new houses, each family building as much status as they could afford into the oak. Which is the final thing to understand as the household sleeps behind its barred shutters. Nothing about this house is quaint to the people inside it. It is warm where their grandparents were smoky, private where their grandparents were communal, glazed where their grandparents were shuttered, and it is the proof, hanging jettied over the street for everyone to see, that this family is rising in the world. That was a day inside a Tudor house in the England of 1560. A hand-raised skeleton of oak, jointed and pegged like a giant piece of furniture, its upper floors leaning out over the street, its walls filled with wattle and daub, and its windows glinting with small diamond panes of precious glass. A house transformed by the revolutionary brick chimney, which banished the smoke, sealed the old open hall, stacked private rooms above, and quietly invented domestic privacy itself. A house that was shop, factory, and fortress at once. The master trading at the street window, the mistress running her empire of brewing, baking, preserving, and physic. The apprentices and servants filling the garrets, the whole small commonwealth governed from the one true chair in the parlour, and a house whose nights were their own world, the fires banked under the curfew, the doors barred, the family climbing into the curtained harbour of the great bed, worth more than a farm, to sleep their two sleeps propped half upright in the dark. Hundreds of these houses still stand across England, leaning over the streets at their tipsy angles, photographed by millions as fairy tale relics. But they were never quaint. They were new money and new comfort, ambition framed in oak, the proud machines of a rising age. And if you ever stand in one, on the worn floorboards under the low beams, listen for it. The scrape of the ember rake before dawn, the creak of the bed ropes, the murmur of the second sleep hour, the whole vanished life of the household that once read its own future in the pattern of black timber and white plaster it presented so confidently to the street.